Good evening and welcome to the regular meeting of Council for February 3rd, 2021. We're resuming the meeting at 7:02 p.m. and we've discussed an item in our in-camera portion that is going to lead to a motion coming forward. Hopefully. Councilor Cox.
Thank you, Your Worship. I move that Council approve the CAO Employment Addendum Agreement and authorize the Mayor to execute the agreement on behalf of the town.
Thank you for that motion. We have the motion on the floor. All in favor? And that motion is carried. We don't have a second one yet, do we? And we have a second motion arising? You folks might have got it on your emails. They're shaking their heads. And if the public at home will just bear with us, this will just take a minute or so. Councillor Corbeil.
Thank you, Your Worship. Move that Council, pursuant to Section 205(2) of the Municipal Government Act, Council appoint Douglas B. Lagore as the Chief Administrative Officer.
Thank you for that motion. You've all heard the motion. All in favor? And the motion is carried. Thank you, everyone. That brings us to item 4, presentations, recognitions. We have none of those. No delegations tonight and no consent agenda. So that brings us to item 7, confirmation of minutes. 7.1, adoption of the December 3rd, 2020 special council meeting minutes. Councillor Cox.
I move we adopt the December 3rd council minutes.
Thank you for that. You've all heard the motion. All in favor? Thank you. And for those of you at home, I'm slowing down on putting my hand up. Last week, my wife told me that I was putting my hand up first, and I should wait a little longer, so I'm slowing down a bit. 7.2, the adoption of the January 20th, 2021 public hearing meeting minutes. Councillor Peterson.
Your Worship, I would move adoption of the January 20th, 2021 public hearing meeting minutes.
Thank you very much. You've all heard the motion. All in favor? The motion is carried. 7.3, the adoption of the January 20th, 2021 regular council meeting minutes. Councillor Corbeil, thank you.
I move that Council adopt the January 20th, 2021 regular council meeting minutes as presented.
Thank you for that motion. You've all heard the motion. All in favor? And that motion is carried. Item 8, we have no tabled items, so that brings us to 9, items and reports from administration. 9.1, anti-racism campaign. And good evening and welcome, and if you wouldn't mind introducing yourselves for the public at home, thank you.
Sure, good evening. I'm Catherine Walsh, the Manager of Community and Social Development.
And I am Istoka B. Smith, the Indigenous Liaison.
Good evening, Your Worship and Council. We honor all the many First Nations, Métis, and Inuit whose footsteps have marked these lands for centuries. We acknowledge the ancestral and traditional lands on which we gather our land of the Blackfoot Confederacy and Treaty 7 territory, a traditional meeting ground for many Indigenous peoples, and in particular our neighbors, Siksika Nation, on whose territory we work, live, and play, and whose territory we stand and where Strathmore resides. We are here this evening to give you an update on our anti-racism project with the Department of Canadian Heritage. It is my understanding that this project was presented to Council in January and June of 2020. There are several activities within this project, but tonight we would like to specifically focus on the anti-racism billboard campaign. Our hope is to deliver recognition and respect for Indigenous history and help increase awareness, knowledge, and appreciation of racialized peoples by residents of Strathmore, including the effects of current and historical racism. I would like to recognize Estokami for her hard work and dedication she has provided this project, establishing the budget and deadlines, as well as facilitating conversation and activities. And with that, I will let Estokami explain a little bit more about the project.
In receiving the Anti-Racism Action Program grant, which will support our program, Awotuka, we have key activities and goals to be met. The anti-racism campaign, I Say No to Racism, will be a community-driven initiative by having community members from Strathmore, Siksika Nation, and the surrounding communities share their perspective and experiences with racism and how they say no to racism. These members will share their message through a short video that will be shared on social media platforms. The proposed project, Awotuka, will take place from November 1st, 2020 to March 31st, 2022. This project will support the town of Strathmore in addressing historical and ongoing racism against the Indigenous community, particularly the Siksika First Nation, which is the second largest reserve in Canada and neighbors Strathmore. Issues of overt racism in Strathmore have led to long-standing tensions between the two communities. The project seeks to address these issues by achieving community change through multifaceted approach that engages the community from the individual to institutions. This includes a series of community conversations, cultural awareness, anti-racism activities, cultural programming, community education campaigns, and the implementation of anti-racism bylaws by the town. This project will support changes in the community to create a more inclusive community where Indigenous peoples feel safe, are able to secure and retain employment within the town, and participate in the community. The campaign will also have a billboard in town with members on the board who support this message. This is a visible sign to the commitment that Strathmore is taking to denounce racism, a sign that will be seen by thousands of people and spark difficult conversations that will open the hearts and minds of residents. Along with the video and the billboard will be a web page. This page is to educate people on racism by providing statistics and resources to better inform them, as well as how to respond to racism. We have already started to engage with Siksika members to involve them in the campaign, and the feedback has been very positive. They are eager to be involved, ready to share their stories, and for their voices to be heard. We have also reached out to Chief Crowfoot to honor protocol to use Siksika colors as a design element for the billboards, and he has accepted, which we are very grateful for.
Thank you very much for your presentation. I know Council is excited about the grant program and the different things that are going to be happening with that. So I appreciate the information, and I'm sure councillors have some questions and comments for you. Councillors, did you have any questions or comments for our presenters? Councillor Peterson?
Excuse me, Stokemy. It's Gapi, it's Awotuka. It's Omachikoke. I am really proud of what you've accomplished. And one of the things that I've heard from persons in the community is that they are really excited about this. And I've also heard from persons of color that they are interested in following up on what you do with the Indigenous community. And so I think that this is going to lead to something even greater and with an even broader perspective. So I really congratulate you on what you've done, and I'm really proud of this council for the actions that they've taken and the progress that they've made in a little bit more than 3 years. And it's wonderful that you're a part of this. And I just also want to add my deepest appreciation for all the things that Strathmore Family Community Support Service is doing to form a safety net for this community. And particularly this highlights that. And I offer you my my congratulations and thanks and support.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Peterson. Councilor Corbeil.
Thank you, Worship. I also want to say thank you. I do think this is a great project. I find it sad that we actually have to do these projects, and it's not just common sense and, you know, normal people and practiced in everyday normal life. But honestly, some of the stories that I have heard being on this council that have happened to citizens in our town is something that I really would like highlighted. It doesn't have to be like the wares or nothing like that, but just to get it out there and to, it was a real eye opener for me as to what actually happens sometimes in this town. You know, it's a great project, and I really want to say thank you for taking this on and continuing on. It's great.
Thank you, Councilor Corbeil. Councilor Cox.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just wanted to ask the girls, I went through and watched all the videos from Saskatoon, and I just wondered, are we going down that road, and when will we be able to start doing the videos?
Yes, that was definitely the plan. Like I mentioned, we have already started reaching out to members in Siksika, and we have received some submissions of their interviews, and now we just have to reach out to the Strathmore community to be involved as well.
Thank you, sorry.
Thank you, Councilor Cox. Any other comments? Well, once again, thank you for your presentation, and we look forward to seeing and hearing all the things that are going on. It's something that's really special for Strathmore, and the fact that we could achieve this grant is amazing as well. So again, thank you. We wish you all the best, and let me know if you need me for anything. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Councilors, we're just looking for a motion to accept this. Councilor Peterson, sorry, Deputy Mayor Peterson.
Thank you, Your Worship. I would move that council accept with gratitude the anti-racism campaign report for information.
Thank you very much. You've all heard the motion. All in favor? And that motion is carried. Thank you, ladies. And that brings us to item 9.2, the Strathmore Municipal Building Solar Panel Initiative. And Ethan is presenting tonight and speaking to us. So welcome, Ethan.
Thank you, Your Worship and Council. I bring this before you as you've discussed this on 3 different occasions in the past. We're talking about adding solar to the building that we're in, our new municipal building. It was asked that administration go out and get some new pricing, find out if there's grants available, and then bring it back to council. What we were able to get was a quote as well as a contract offer from a company called Skyfire Energy. They're a company that's Western Canadian. They've got an office in Calgary as well as Edmonton and other areas. And what they're proposing is a 73.5 kilowatt DC solar voltaic system. This is estimated to produce about 55% of the building's electricity and reduce our yearly operating costs by about $4,500. We were able to use some imagery that we got during the construction of this building to get a more accurate assessment of what we were able to put on our roof. Past presentations to council had an 88 kilowatt system. 73.5 is what they're guaranteeing. They don't think they can fit a system that reaches 88. This system is estimated to cost at $120,000 or just over $120,000. But through the Alberta government, there's a grant available that's both based on the amount of power that this would generate, but also that this would be the first time that we apply for this grant. When we combine those two items together, we get about $55,000 in return. The grant is not something that you have to qualify for. There is minimum requirements which this system would meet. It's a first come, first served grant. So we've reached out to them. The money is still available at this time, and we expect that if we go forward with this, that we would receive that grant money. As part of the contract that's been offered between Skyfire, there is a clause in there which says that if we do not get the grant, that we could opt out of this contract and not proceed any further. If we do happen to do that, it would cost the town about $5,000 in design fees, and that's it. What I'm here today to ask you is for approval of $70,000 from money that's already allocated to the construction of the Strathmore Municipal building, which has been unspent, in order to proceed with this project. That would be enough to cover the costs not reimbursed by the grant, as well as give us a small contingency should we need it during the construction process. With that, I'll open it up to questions.
Thank you, Ethan. Thank you very much for your presentation. Councillor Cox.
Thank you, Your Worship. Ethan, can you please explain to me why the last time that we this was brought forward, we had, I believe, 3 companies to choose from, and now we only have just the one?
Absolutely, Your Worship, through the chair. When this was last brought to you, there was an option between NMAX and Skyfire. I believe there was a third company that was looked at that time, but they were eliminated for various reasons. At that time, the choice was to go with NMAX, and when the contract came from NMAX, there were some clauses in there which were not favorable for the town and something that we were not comfortable with engaging in. I believe that was around the time when council made the decision to no longer proceed with this. So after going through that process, having NMAX no longer someone that we wish to proceed with, we went back to Skyfire and got further details and refined budgets from them.
So, Ethan, were the costs that Skyfire brought to us last time very similar to this time?
Yes, they are. They are slightly less because we've got a smaller system now that we know what we can achieve on our roof, but yes, they are comparable.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cox. Councillor Sobel.
Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you for your work on this, Ethan. Excuse me. So I have 2 questions and then just a very, very quick comment. Can you tell me if this was to go ahead, if there would be any plans to measure how much electricity is being generated, how much real dollars are being saved, and what level of carbon emissions are being avoided? I kind of think these indicators are important in evaluating a program like this success, and for maybe even justifying further investment in town-owned clean energy.
Yes, Your Worship, through the chair, this system does come on with a monitoring program. It's called Solar Edge. So it would track how much electricity that's actually being created by these solar panels. As part of the proposal from Skyfire, they estimate over a 30-year life of the system that the CO2 emissions saved would be about 1.3 million kilograms of CO2e.
Thank you. And I get the sense that there's still a little bit of confusion as to whether this project is worth it. So I'm going from page 31 of the agenda package. The estimated cost of the project is approximately $4,600 a year, and that's with maintenance. And please correct me if I'm wrong. And that's what I'm actually hoping that you'll correct any errors I'm making here. $4,600 per year with maintenance included. So at a cost of $66,000, which is a reduction of 66% of the actual cost. Full recoup of the investment would occur after 14 years, sooner if electricity prices rise. Is that accurate, or could you correct me on those statements?
Councillor, no, I would read it the same way you have. The $4,600 estimate is per year after maintenance. And yes, when you look at it after the grant funding, the value and the return on investment would be about 14 years.
Thank you. So just a very quick comment. With the Alberta Municipal Solar Program, municipal governments have an opportunity to lead by example in the shift to clean energy by taking advantage of the physical assets that they have the most control, that's they as in being we, have the most control over, their own land and buildings. Installing PV or solar photovoltaic panels on city-owned, town-owned property employs underutilized space to reduce energy costs and can even generate a return. Solar PVs cannot be installed everywhere. The technology is best suited to large rooftops that are flat or face the sun, are not shaded, and are structurally sound. I think we should look at this as a pilot project, and it's a good one. It's the right size, it's the right price. It's not a huge amount of money, but this is the way of the future, in my opinion, fellow councillors, and I think this is one that would make an effective pilot project for this municipality going forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Sobel. Is there anyone else just before I come back? Councillor Montgomery, and then I'll come back to Councillor Cox. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Worship. And thanks for the report, Ethan. So my concerns with this and any project that the town takes on is just ensuring that, you know, we're kind of focusing the money in the most effective direction, let's say. So when it comes to like something like solar, for instance, you know, it comes down to, are we actually going to come out ahead in the end? And you know, is it worth kind of the cost, I guess, that we'll be expending? And I think that at this point we have an incomplete picture of what the actual cost is. And my concerns revolve around, and thank you for addressing, you know, some of my questions through the email that I sent a couple days ago. But so my concerns revolve around, I think that there's a need to create a reserve to deal with the replacement and repair of the panels. You know, if it's 5, 10, 15 years down the road, we need to have money set aside for that. And then as well, we also need to create a reserve for the end of life removal and then possible replacement. And so I would prefer, before we make a decision like this, to actually have a discussion about what we are willing to put into reserves, you know, to cover those costs. And then like, I think that I would also appreciate getting some confirmation. I understand through the email I sent that currently you guys are under the impression that the cost of, you know, removing and disposing of the panels would pay for itself, essentially, because of the materials that are contained within the panels, you know, being worth something to recyclers. So from what I've read, especially like with the number, you know, with the amount of panels that are being put on, you know, these days, you know, in 2040 to 2050 to 2060, there's going to be such a glut of panels that are going to be recycled that are going to come on the market. You know, like, so like, you know, 10 years ago, it was no problem for us to get rid of, you know, other recycled materials through our, you know, our recycling yard. And as we've seen, you know, we cannot actually even get somebody to buy those materials anymore. And so then we're on the hook essentially for trying to get rid of those materials. And I tried finding, you know, where like panels can even be disposed of at this point now, especially kind of larger amounts of panels. And, you know, for instance, the city of Calgary, they don't just, you know, like let people show up and dump panels in the landfill, for instance. So I would, before I can make a decision about this, I would have to have the reserves kind of settled, I guess, so we can understand what our actual, you know, obligation is. Because, you know, sure, we'll be saving, you know, it looks like about $4,600 per year. But, you know, if we're setting aside, you know, a couple grand, you know, a couple of times, you know, that might eat up, you know, whatever savings we have. And then as well, I think that the actual cost, I would like to see something from a company that actually does deal with disposal of large amounts of solar panels to see, because yeah, especially ones that are, you know, like where it's end of life. You know, it's not, these aren't panels that can be reused. It's like, hey, here's some old panels that are 30 years old. You know, what's it going to cost to get them off this 2-story building, and then where are you going to dispose them? I would personally just like to know that information and just kind of, you know, have it solidified before I can make a decision on this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Montgomery. We'll go to Doug from administration.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, administration is looking at drafting a policy on reserves. And at that time, we would address solar panels. So I don't think we need to address that this evening. We do need to address our reserve policy overall, and we will be doing that very shortly. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Ethan?
Yeah, Your Worship, through the chair, I just want to clarify the disposal item. We did talk to Skyfire about this before responding to the question, and the way it was explained was there would be costs for labor to remove it from the building, but it's not expected there would be cost for disposal. So the recycling value of these, be it scrap metal, would pay for the disposal fee that would be expected for the other items, but there would likely be a small charge for labor, and I think it was in about a $10,000 range is the expectation.
Okay, thank you. Does that clear up anything for you, Councillor Montgomery?
Yeah, well, and as I said, like, my concern isn't so much today. Like today, there's certainly, you know, there's you know, probably more of a market for stuff like that. But when there's, you know, going to be a huge amount coming onto the market, you know, in 20 to 30 years from now, you know, the picture probably, like, I wouldn't want to count on the fact that some business is going to want to remove the panels or at least dispose of them, you know, for free. I don't see that being the case, you know, 30 years from now. So I guess, yeah, like I would just like to hear from a company that actually does the disposal currently, even of solar panels, what they would charge. Maybe, and yeah, if they say that you know, they would take them, you know, for free, then that's, you know, I guess I'll take that at this point. And then with regards to the reserves, as I said, like, that's, I think, yeah, I agree. We definitely need to work on a reserves policy, but with regards to this specific issue, I think it's important that we know going into it what our commitment will have to be as far as setting aside money for reserves. And then one final thing I was going to say is that I wholeheartedly agree that, you know, we should be looking to lead the way and to be making our buildings more efficient in whatever ways we can. And if it turns out that, you know, using this money towards the solar panels, you know, if that's not, you know, the best way to use it, then perhaps there's other better uses, such as just improving the energy efficiency of our buildings, you know, which will net have the same effect without, you know, having to worry about disposal years from now. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll go to Deputy Mayor Peterson and then Councillor Cox.
Thank you, Worship. I know that when we were looking at this situation before, that the conversation about recycling and reclamation came up. And I remember in a separate conversation with a previous engineer working for the town that he talked about a company out of Shanghai that was doing phenomenal work in this. And I know that the work that I've read is from the University of Calgary School of Public Policy. And they've done some really good work, and they've kept up very, very adeptly. And I know that was one of the other things that we spoke about in terms of the rapidly transitioning science around solar panels, and that one of the advantages of the system that we had instituted is that we would be able to adapt our system, the system that's on our roof, to accommodate new and more comprehensive technology going forward. So that would add to that complexity that Councillor Montgomery speaks to. So, you know, I think that there's some worth, you know, when we started selling billions of cars, we didn't think about the tires. You know, it took a long time to get to that, but we did get to it. In terms of actually supporting this, hearing that the grant is a pretty sure thing, I think that's really compelling for me. to sign a contract that is contingent on the grant. And I think that that it does allow us to move into a space where we can set example. It speaks to future care and concern for our youth. And I think the removing that amount of CO2e from our environment is significant. So I'm not hesitant to go forward with this, Your Worship.
Sorry, I missed that last part, Deputy Mayor.
That I am in favor of this.
Okay, thank you. If I could just ask a question before I go back to Councillor Cox. Ethan, I see that the warranty ranges between 10 and 25 years. And in approximately, Councillor Sobel, if my remembrance is correct, did you say about 14 years before this is paid off in a way?
That's what I asked. That's what my estimation is, Your Worship.
Okay.
At the current electricity prices,
Okay,
bear in mind.
Thank you. And so my question to you, Ethan, is, do you know, as far as these panels and products like this, when they come to the end of their warranty, which is roughly when we'd be breaking even on the investment we're making, do they normally need to be replaced at, say, 15 to 16 years, or do they stay in much longer? Is it just the warranty that expires?
Your Worship, so my understanding is that the system is expected to have a lifespan of at least 30 years, but the warranties, like you've noted, vary between 3 and 25, depending on what item we're talking about. My other understanding about the solar panels is they typically don't just fail one day. They slowly get less efficient until they're at a point where they're not producing as much energy as you'd like, and therefore you either remove them or replace them. But that 30-year lifespan is expected to be a usable lifespan, not working but not really working. It's expected over those 30 years that they'd be producing measurable electricity.
Okay, thank you for that. Councillor Cox.
Thank you, Worship. I need to spin this in a completely different way. It just came to me the other day, or just here half an hour ago. Have we engaged Lambert Village? Is that what they're called? The building across from us? Because they're going to look directly at that. Have we even given them the consideration of whether or not that's going to decrease their property values?
Ethan?
Your Worship, through the chair, we have not engaged them, but we can do that before we start construction. The one thing I would like to note, though, is that these panels are set at about a 10-degree from flat, so they're not expected to sit. They'll be about equal to the parapet height of our roof right now. So if you're looking straight across our roof, you'd kind of see a level surface, not the top of our roof and then a panel many feet above it, if that helps your concern in any way.
It does, but I also don't know a lot about it. Is there going to be a reflection? Is there going like a lot of things? Like they literally will be looking right at it. Like they'd be on their deck, they would be looking right at it. Is it going to cause them any, discomfort? Is it going to shine? I don't know any of that, and I don't know if maybe Sky Fire would know any of that. But I mean, it definitely affects them. So should we be asking if they care? I don't know. That is a concern of mine. And I think possibly we should have some answers to that before we sign a contract as well.
Thank you, Councillor Cox. Those are good points too. And I'm just wondering, Ethan, are we in a time crunch, a time situation as far as getting this approved?
Your Worship, so two things. We can have Skyfire give us their comment on how this would affect Lambert Village. The panels would be faced away from the building because the sun is generally in the south. So reflection is not expected to be a concern. But given your comments, by all means, we can get the right information from Skyfire and provide that to Lambert for their information. As far as timing goes, the intent is to get this contract in place so that we can apply for the grant so that we can start construction as soon as possible. The reason that is because you get your best bang for your buck in the summer months, and therefore we'd be seeing a return on our investment right away. As we wait longer, we would be likely energizing these closer to winter and not seeing a return on our investment as much until next summer.
So I guess my question to you is could it wait until the 17th when we can get a little information? And, you know, I agree with Councillor Cox. We're in a unique situation because we're new to the neighborhood in this building, and we do want to make sure that our neighbors aren't going to be negatively impacted by some of the decisions we make. And it would be a disaster if we put them in and then they were really affected by them. So I think if we can look into it a bit more and maybe have it come back on the 17th. I see some hands up. I'll go with Councillor Sobel and then Deputy Mayor Peterson.
Mine's up by error, Your Worship.
Okay, thank you. Deputy Mayor.
I just had another question. I think Ethan answered it, but we could still apply for the grant emergently if it's on a first come, first serve. And if we didn't use it, we could turn it back, right? I think that would work. And a supplemental question I had, Your Worship. I know that Ethan talked about the $70,000 is unspent with regards to money set aside for the town hall. I just want to ensure we still have that common room building on the bottom floor that has some work to be done, and just wanted to ensure that it doesn't impede that in any way. And I'm confident that our administration has that covered, but I just would like assurances around that as well.
And that's a good point as well. We want to make sure that flex space, that there's funds set aside in case we do decide to develop it or we need it as additional space or some great idea comes our way. We'll go to Councillor. That doesn't happen often, great ideas, but every now and then you get lucky, right? We'll go to Councillor Montgomery and then we'll figure out our plan of action.
Thank you, Worship. Yeah, so I guess if it's going to come back, I would certainly appreciate if administration could bring back some estimates as far as like what our reserve contribution obligations would look like. And then as well, as I said, if we could just get something from a company that at least at this point just says, yeah, you know, we'd be willing to dispose of a large number of panels, you know, for free essentially, or you know, besides labor essentially, you know, that they would be willing to do that. That would certainly help. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Montgomery. So do we need a motion to table or we just put it off until, is council comfortable just delaying this till we get a little more information and check with Lambert?
Sure.
Jennifer?
Your Worship, council could postpone the matter till the February 17th meeting, I believe. Yeah, yes, please.
Okay, so council, if you're comfortable with us postponing till February 17th when Ethan can get a bit of information and then we can also touch base with Lambert Village, we would need a motion then to postpone this till February 17th. Deputy Mayor Peterson.
Your Worship, I would move that council postpone agenda item 9.2 from the January 28th from the February 3rd meeting until February 17th.
Thank you for the motion. You've all heard the motion. All in favor? And the motion is carried. Thank you, Ethan. I know it puts a little more on you, but it'll clarify the situation, and it's obviously going to demonstrate to Lambert Village that we are thinking about them as neighbors too. Thank you. That brings us to 9.4, council committee appointments, public members, which is on page 64.
Thank you, Your
Deborah.
Worship. Thank you, Your Worship. We've received 2 applications for the Seniors Advisory Committee. We have 3 open positions available, so we have space, and the nomination committee has reviewed and approved the applications.
Thank you very much. Councilors? Oh, Councillor Sobel, your hand is up.
Just ready with a motion, Your Worship.
Thank you.
I move that council accept recommendations from the nomination committee and appoint Marjorie Weatherby and Phyllis Allen to the Seniors Advisory Committee for a term ending October 31st, 2021.
Thank you for the motion. You've all heard the motion. All in favor? And the motion is carried. Thank you. And that brings us to committee reports.
Your Worship?
Oh, sorry, Councillor Sobel.
I'm sorry, just, I'm not sure if we can speak on this, but there was discussion today about assigning Councilor Peterson to a committee as well. I don't know if we can deal with that or not. If we were going to, it would be in this area, I suppose.
Okay, Jennifer is saying we can do that in questions between councilors and council statements.
Cool, thank you.
And then Jennifer, are you guys crafting a motion as far as Councilor Peterson? Do you need to know the name of the committee? Okay. Thank you for that. Item 10, committee reports. Committee reports on which councilors sit. I think we have some in our agenda package, I saw. Deputy Mayor Peterson.
Your Worship, I included, thank you to Ms. Hammerlock, included in our packages the Marigold Library report. And it is a little bit more extensive, but because of COVID, they've been doing lots of things differently. But the one thing that I think that council would find interesting is the website that informs on the new building. So for our public, that is Marigold WIDcommunity.ca. Marigold WIDcommunity.ca. Miriam Osterman has done a fantastic job of putting together a website that tracks the progress of the new building in our community, and it's going very, very well. It's on point all the way through, and we're very, very excited. So far they're on track for their fall opening. Seniors Advisory also met, and the only thing that I know that Deborah does those minutes and she guides that committee. I'm very grateful for that. The only thing that I would like to just briefly note to council is that coming from one of the members of the Seniors Advisory Committee is an issue around asking council to put forward a resolution on long-term care facilities in the province. And they have some very specific points they would like to deal with, and they will be bringing that to council at a later date. And so just so that you have a heads up on that. And the reason I ask for that is that I know that with all of your connections to various councils around the province, I am convinced that we will not be the only group that will be bringing such a resolution forward. But the Seniors Advisory Committee is committed to it. I'm glad that they are. And so I look forward to that. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Peterson. I also wanted to just thank you and your group at Wheatland Housing for increasing the Christmas staff bonus to $100 for the staff. I know they've been through a lot this year, and I think that's a great way to recognize them and to show them some support in this tough time. So thank you both for being on that board, and thank you for bringing forward that motion and looking after the staff there.
And Your Worship, if I might speak to that, one of the reasons that Wheatland Housing Authority felt compelled to do that was that our government had been lagging in being able to do those payouts to staff. So we are really hoping that our government still uses that federal money to upgrade funding to staffs in long-term care facilities. And I heard today an additional a resolution by our provincial government to support long-term care facilities and other marginalized groups within the province that suffer the consequences of COVID lockdowns. And I'm really grateful for that. And I'm grateful for my compatriot, for Terry, on that committee and for what that staff has done. And thank you for the mention.
Thank you. And thank you, Councillor Cox, for your work on that housing board too. It's much appreciated. You guys do valuable work. Any other reports from councillors? Councillor Montgomery.
I have a bit of just kind of a late report on the handy bus. So the handy bus board and association has been working hard to, I guess, kind of finalize the last few things. They've been meeting multiple times a week. I should say we've been meeting multiple times a week. But yeah, I just want to say that the board is working very hard to get things up and running. So the first day of running under the new independent service was this past week, so on Monday. And so apparently things are going well. And we have all 6 vans out running, and so that's good news. They're busy, and so yeah, if anyone needs a ride from the handy bus, you can contact 403-934-3418, or you can go to their website at handybus.ca. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Montgomery, and thank you for your work on that, that committee as well. It's much appreciated. I'll thank everybody. Thank you, Councilor Sobel. Thank you, Councilor Corbeil, for all your work on the committees that you folks are on. I know you put a lot of time in the evenings, and it's extra time that goes beyond your typical work days. So thank you very much to all of you. And there we go. Some good news. And that brings us to item 11, items directly related to council. 11.1 capital project modification, which is on page 76. Councilor, who's speaking to this? Is it Councilor Montgomery? Councilor Montgomery.
Thank you. So administration has asked me to kind of just modify the motion that I'll be making, and sorry, I just gotta find it here. So but the motion I'll be making, I'm gonna, I have two notice of motions, I guess, or two motions, but so one, I'll just keep them separate, I guess, but they are slightly different, but just more in line with what administration is asking for. So my motion to do with the capital project modification will be that I move that council direct administration to create policy that would limit capital funds to be used only for the specific projects that they have been approved for, and where any proposed or necessary deviations or alterations would be reapproved by council prior to initiation or further progress if already started. And further, the CAO or designate will report ongoing cost updates as well as final cost breakdowns following the completion of budgeted capital projects.
Did you want to speak to that motion?
Sure, thank you. This just has to do with ensuring that, so currently when council goes through budget process, administration presents a list of capital projects that will be undertaken in the upcoming year. And there are times when those details of those projects need to change or administration has a better idea. I just want to ensure that that council is kept in the loop and that council is, accountable and responsible for how those monies are spent. And so I believe that this policy will help to just kind of move things more in that direction if necessary, or when the occasion arises. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Montgomery, for explaining that. And we have a motion on the floor, discussion. Deputy Mayor Peterson.
So this is a motion for voting, not a notice of motion. Just for clarification.
This is my motion, yeah.
Yes, it's a motion that has come forward tonight.
So Your Worship, one of the questions I have, just for clarification, I have no problem with the motion whatsoever. When we ran into significant difficulties on the overruns on the Commons project, particularly after repeated questions by this council for clarification on funding, one of the outcomes of that was that administration brought forward a policy around how we would deal with this, and it was very similar to what I see that Councillor Montgomery has brought forward here, but there was an additional part to that related to oversight, so that it would go from whoever was managing the project, provision to council, back around to whoever was providing the oversight, that there was that circle to ensure that council was informed and that oversight had happened. And I just wondered what happened to that policy.
Administration, are you comfortable responding to that?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we could not find any policy in our policy manual on it, and I support what's coming forward here. I think we need to have some clarity on it. We'll do that through the next motion as well. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Mr. Legore, for clarifying that. So no policy that they could find. And for those of you at home watching or councillors, administration through Mr. Legore is comfortable with the motion and feels that it's a solid thing to consider. Any other comments? Seeing none, I'll call the motion. All in favor? And the motion is carried. Thank you. And that brings us to item 11.2, budget clarity. Councilor Montgomery, you're speaking to this again.
Thank you. Just give me a second, please. So this is more in, this is basically just taking the wording from the recommendation by administration. So I will move the council direct administration to review the budget policy to bring clarity to allocation of all surpluses and then utilization and maintenance of reserves. So if I could just speak to that, essentially it's just to do with so when council is looking at budget time, looking at the budget, I just want to, I guess, make it a bit easier for for one is we just have to kind of see where the money is going as far as like surpluses, what reserves they're going into, just make it a bit more clear to council, so council has a better understanding of what's going on essentially. And I think that this will just help to bring clarity to that. And then as well, it'll I think that as administration has kind of mentioned, it'll kind of help with reviewing the reserve policy. And so I think this is in line with that as well. Thank you.
Thank you. And just before we have further discussion, could I ask a quick question, Councillor Montgomery? Was the motion doesn't match mine? Is that one that was clarified again with administration as far as wording?
So when administration had sent me basically that wording as kind of their preference for the motion. Originally, I just kind of mentioned that I would like administration to just kind of more clearly outline it. So outline where the surpluses are and where they're going to.
Okay, thank you for that clarification, Deputy Mayor Peterson.
Thank you, Your Worship. I noticed in the resolution, in the final line, that it speaks to policy, and I'm just wondering if there isn't some wisdom, and I would ask administrations and Councillor Montgomery's input on this, if there isn't some wisdom in actually putting this in a bylaw.
Mr. Legore?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, you can adopt this by bylaw, but there's no real advantage to it. Policy is much easier to amend. We have to enforce whether it's a bylaw or a policy, so our view is that a policy is more than sufficient.
Thank you for that clarification. Deputy Mayor
Your
Peterson?
Worship, I would just point out that previous administration had said to this council that policy was not binding. I just want to point that out because that has been the case in the past since I've been in my 7 years on this council. That there and I have no problem with it being in policy. I think that it is key that policy be treated as a definitive for how we go about doing our business. And I have no problem with it. But I just want to point out that that's my reason for bringing it up.
Thank you for that. Mr. Legore?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, policies are enforceable and administration is duty bound to follow the policy.
Thank you. That's good to know too as we move forward on our different projects. So we have that motion on the floor. Is there any further discussion? And seeing none, all in favor? And that motion, Deputy Mayor Peterson, did you vote against?
She voted for it.
I did. Thank you, Your Worship. I voted in favor.
Okay, thank you. So the motion is carried. Thank you very much. And that brings us to 11.3, notice of motion. Councillor Montgomery regarding business license fees. Councillor Montgomery?
Thank you, Your Worship. So this is a notice of motion, and I would like this, brought forward for the, I guess it'd be the next council meeting, so the 17th. And it just has to do with, tiered business license fees. And so the motion will be that council direct administration to review the business license fees and provide a report and recommendations back to council on the possible implementation of a tiered business license fee structure. And so the idea behind this is, when we had our recent discussion about business license fees, it was noted that a home-based business, for instance, pays, the same or close to the same as a business like Walmart. And so I think that there's, obviously a bit of a difference between those businesses. And so I would like to see, and so through my research, I found that there are other municipalities that do have graduated or tiered business license fees. A good example is Canmore. They have quite a good looking one, and I think that this would help. It's possible. I'm not looking to increase the amount of money we take in as a whole from businesses. I think that actually if we take in a bit more from some of the bigger businesses, we could actually reduce what we take in from the smaller businesses. So that could actually have a net positive effect for some of the smaller businesses. And thank you.
Thank you for that. And just to Jennifer, we're not passing a motion. This is just a notice of motion. Okay. So Councillor Cox, did you have the same question?
I just had a quick question for Councilor Montgomery. I read in a couple of emails with respect to that high density thing. Could that not be part of your motion as well?
Are you referring to, I think, the email that just came in this evening? I haven't had a chance to review that email yet. I'll have to. I'm not sure. Like, administration would know better than me if those discussions can happen at the same time. But I think they probably should be separate discussions.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, everybody. Oh, Mr. Simpson.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. They are separate discussions. We're quite aware of both of them. In fact, I just sent a response back regarding home occupations. It will be a separate discussion and separate bylaw that we'll be working on. But we would need probably some direction from council on that as well through a notice of motion.
Yeah, I'll be doing that ASAP. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank you.
Simpson. Thank you, Councillor Montgomery. And moving on, we are not discussing bylaw number 21-06 tonight. That brings us to urgent business. I don't think there is any. And then item 14, which is where we're going to be discussing potential committee appointment. And that is questions between councillors and council statements, 14.1. And Ms. Swatsky, do you need me to talk about that at all? Thank you. I think I forwarded it to all of you, and I'm sorry I forward so many things I sometimes forget which I've done, but the Strathmore Agricultural Society is planning to construct a riding arena. And so they were hoping and looking for someone on council who might be willing to come forward and sit on the committee and begin the work towards creating that riding arena as part of their vision moving forward. So we've talked about it via emails just to gauge the interest and ability of councillors to possibly go on that committee. And so I think administration, do you have enough information to craft a motion? And are you sending it to our guests at home? So our at-home audience of councillors, you should be receiving a lovely parting gift of an email coming your way, a carefully crafted motion. Councillor Cox.
I just wanted to make a point of the fact that I can ride a horse and do own a horse, just so you know.
And for those of you who don't know what that's about, I have never been on a horse in my life, and I've lived in Strathmore for almost 38 years. So I decided I would not be a good candidate, especially with my experience as a terrible handyman. So we have a motion that has come to our council that hopefully someone will be able to make regarding a committee appointment. Councillor Corbeil.
Thank you, Your Worship. I move that council appoint Councillor Peterson to the Strathmore District Agricultural Society Riding Academy, but I don't think it's academy, is it?
No, it's not an academy. It's a committee.
No.
It's like a building committee for
I'm just going.
for a riding arena. It's a building committee for
Yeah,
the riding arena.
for the Indoor Riding Arena Advisory Committee.
Thank you very, very much.
That's what it
Thank you
is.
for making that motion.
For
And
the
thank
term
you-
ending October 18th, 2021.
Thank you for the motion and your clarification. You've all heard the motion on the floor. All in favor? And that motion is carried. That now brings us to item 15, administrative inquiries. Deborah, do we have any?
There are none, Your Worship. Thank you.
And we have no administrative inquiries, so at this time I'm looking for a motion to adjourn.
So move.
Deputy Mayor Peterson makes the motion to adjourn. And all in favor? And the motion is carried. Thank you all. Thank you, public at home watching.